Today, on Be Something Wonderful, oh my God, you will never look at 3D conditions the same ever again. I am your host, Tom Karen, and this is the Be Something Wonderful studio of higher consciousness, where we help you level up and become the best version of yourself. Creators, welcome back. I heard from one of our clients, this is one of my clients that's a regular client. I meet with her a couple times a month. And what we have been talking about lately is that she said she's been struggling with disregarding 3D conditions or ignoring 3D conditions. And this relates to something that's going on at her place of work, where she's in charge of many accounts, and one of these accounts is a big account that has decided that they're going to leave. So she feels that she's going to lose this account. And then she has some tiny accounts and a really tiny account that she just feels that she doesn't give enough attention to, and that it might not go anywhere. And then a bunch of other things in terms of the conditions in her life. And we talked about this, and we talked about the idea that Neville Goddard and a lot of spiritual teachers talk about this idea of disregarding or ignoring 3D conditions. But here's the thing. It's not what it means on the surface. What are they really talking about? What they mean when they say disregard or ignore 3D conditions is really put your focus on the spiritual substance, the divine substance behind the conditions, behind the appearances. It's not about resisting or denying 3D reality or running away from it or trying to hide with it or trying not to look at it. It's seeing the potential, the divine substance, the one substance, the one God, the one power behind all of it. Because remember, in everything you see is the whole of God. It's a hologram. That means in every part of what you see in 3D reality contains the whole, even though you're looking at that less than 0.1%. This is big because what happened, this is why in yesterday's session, she said, Tom, oh my Lord, I will never look at 3D conditions the same ever again. Turns out the big account, as she shifted within, this big account is going to stay with them. And it's going to stay, and she's going to stay in charge of it, and it's even going to, they're even going to do more business with them. And the small account, that small little account, they're being acquired by a bigger company. So that's going to turn into a big account. This is why she said, oh my Lord. So I want to talk about this idea and more. And this is what Neville Goddard says. Disregard appearances, conditions, in fact, all evidence of your senses that deny the fulfillment of your desire. But what's Neville really saying here? He's saying disregard the appearances, the appearance of those conditions. That disregard the idea that you're looking at those conditions as evidence that denies the fulfillment of your desire. Instead, look at it as evidence that it's divine supply behind it, that it's God in all of it, and that your desire fulfilled is within that condition. It's just an error in perception. That's what they really mean, right? And Neville makes it clear, right? So instead, see the greater reality in the infinite abundance behind them. See the desire fulfilled, your wish fulfilled in all those conditions. And here's where Neville really clears it up. He says here, the imaginative man does not deny reality of the sensuous outer world of becoming. Hear this. Do you see this? It's right here. The imaginative man does not deny the reality of the sensuous outer world of becoming, but knows that it is the inner world of continuous imagination that is the force by which the sensuous outer world of becoming is brought to pass or brought to be. Wow. All of it is the evidence of infinite supply and all your wishes fulfilled. Do you see? It's very clear what he's talking about here. That's powerful. Let's really unpack this today like we never have before. Then it says, so that's yesterday's. See here, guys. Yep. There we go. It's not about denying or rejecting the 3D conditions, but rather recognizing that the substance behind all appearances is divine. In the beginning, God. All is consciousness. So it's not about denying or rejecting. Neville was clear there, the 3D condition, but rather recognizing the substance, right? The sensuous outer world behind all appearances is divine. And then in Scripture it says, Jesus says, do not judge according to appearances. The appearances that these conditions represent limitation, or these conditions represent what you don't want. Stop judging them by that. Judge them righteously, right? But with righteous judgment is to recognize that the 0.1% of seen reality is part of the united whole of God. It's part of everything that you want. Wow, in that is the divine supply of everything you want, right? Rejecting any part of 3D reality is rejecting God or a part of yourself, right? I am, that contains the whole. You're rejecting part of I am, part of your awareness, part of who you are. That's so big today. So remember, and then Jesus says in Mark 3:25, if a house is divided against itself, that house will not be able to stand. In other words, when you are rejecting any part of 3D reality or any part of yourself, you are rejecting yourself. You're rejecting that I am. You're rejecting God. You're rejecting that because in that part is the whole. You're a house divided. You're a split mind. You're a consciousness divided, right? And it cannot stand. You cannot realize or perceive your wish fulfilled in that case, right? The house of the kingdom of consciousness is a split mind, a house that opposes itself has no power. This is when they were talking about several times in Scripture, where Jesus is removing the demon or the evil or the Satan out of somebody, right? That is the confused thought, the negative thought. That's what Satan represents, that not thinking in accordance to your wish fulfilled. And of course they were accusing him of being evil, but his point was, how could that would be a house divided. He wouldn't be able to take the evil out of somebody if he was evil. Right? Do you hear this? It's that higher power. It was a good point. But here we're talking about it in terms of you being a house divided. When you're looking at the conditions and believing that your fulfillment's not within them. Wow, that's big. Instead, deny the thought or idea of lack in any form and affirm the divine idea of infinite supply, of that spiritual substance of God behind all appearances, right? And one of the greatest metaphysical teachings where Jesus demonstrated feeding 5,000 hungry people with just 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish or fishes, whatever you want to call it, right? This is so important. It's mentioned in all Gospels. In Matthew 14, Mark 6, Luke 9, John 6, Luke 9, John 6. And so let's take a look at this and really get the idea of what Jesus was talking about. It says, Jesus, I am multiplied divine supply or increase of 5 loaves of bread to feed 5,000 hungry people. 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. We're going to talk about the significance of these numbers and what they represent. But remember, it was said to be 5,000 hungry people. What does that really represent? Well, these people. This was around the time of Passover, right? And the people heard about Jesus, the miracles of Jesus. So it was around the time of Passover, and there were multitudes following that I am. They heard of the miracles. But what do the multitudes represent from a metaphysical standpoint? The crowd or the multitude represents thousands of thoughts and consciousness hungry for spiritual understanding or substance, or the I am. Jesus is the I am. So they're following that I am. They're hungry for that higher consciousness. That's your divine urge, hungry for that spiritual substance, right? That bread of God, right? The real sustenance of man. Man should not live by bread alone. There's a richer substance, right? And it's behind all the appearances, right? All those conditions that you think are just bread. It's not just bread alone, it's everything, right? This is big. So it was said in John 6:1, Jesus went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee in Tiberias. Now, what does that really represent? Galilee represents the life energy or activity. The greater power is on the other side or within the deeper alignment with who you are. So Galilee represents that life energy within you. But in order to access it, you've got to go to the other side or within to make to align deeper with it, to identify deeper with your I am awareness, right? Tiberius represents a spiritual insight and discernment of higher thought. So that's why I said Jesus went away to the other side, or within, to the higher side, right? Where that spiritual activity now is empowered, right? With deeper alignment with your I am, deeper alignment with that spiritual insight, right? And then it said here, when Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat down with his disciples. So here it's representing your I am ascending in consciousness, right? Went up the mountain. You're now rising in consciousness to that higher understanding, right? And he sat down with his disciples. That as I am rises in consciousness, your mental faculties, that's your disciples, right? The disciplined mind, right, are lifted up with you. They're lifted up. This is why in Scripture it says, and I, if I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all men to myself. So that's the idea of that your spiritual, your mental facilities are also lifted up. But it also is the idea that as your mental facilities are lifted up, as you rise in consciousness, it includes all your desires are also going to be drawn to you. Right? It's the same idea. What you want or desire or hunger for will be lifted up and drawn to you, and all men will be drawn to you. Or in other words, all your desires, everything you want. That's so powerful today. So it said Jesus multiplied 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish to feed 5,000 hungry people. Let's break this down. What does this really mean? The bread is spiritual substance or faith. The 5 represents your 5 3D senses or your conscious mind. 2 represents duality of the 3D world, the relativity, right? So 5 loaves of bread, the 3D senses, 2 fish, the duality of the 3D world. And the fish themselves represent ideas of abundance or increase. It's the ideas of abundance or increase in the 3D world, the 3D world of duality through your 5 senses. Through the door of the I am, utilizing your conscious mind to rise in consciousness. You see how it's all there, it all makes sense. With the power to multiply, right? That fish, those ideas of abundance, with the 3D senses in the world of duality has the power to multiply, to become divine ideas. Not just 3D limited ideas, but they become the divine ideas in the hands of Jesus, or I am. The spiritual awakens you. Right? 5,000 means the use of the 5 senses in an unlimited and mysterious way. That's whenever you see zeros added to numbers in the thousands, that represents infinite possibilities or the mystery and the infinite power of God. Right? Behind all 3D manifestations is the unlimited substance of God. That's what the 5,000 represents. Right? We talked about this. In those conditions that my client saw, represented the mysterious power and the unlimited power and of God, right? That spiritual, the unlimited power of that spiritual substance is in all those conditions. It's an unlimited capacity to use your 3D presence to reach upward. Wow, reach upward, right? To multiply through the door of the I amness into that dimensionally larger reality. Don't deny or resist anything, transcend it. That's the message so far. Guys, this feeding 5,000, what a powerful analogy for what we're talking about here. So let's continue this a little bit more. 5,000 were hungry. In other words, the 3D you with your unlimited desire, that divine urge to have more spiritual substance and understanding, to be more. That's the 3D you with your thousands of thoughts. And you have that divine urge or that unlimited desire to be more, to have more, to do more. All of that's within you. But all of that desire, what's the core of all your desires? Even though you might say, I want a house, I want a car, I want love, I want these big accounts on my job. All of it is the desire more to know yourself as God, to tap into it, to align with that spiritual substance and have that understanding, that higher understanding, to be more. That's what the 5,000 hungry for what? Hungry for that spiritual substance, hungry for that knowing as God, right? You feed or satisfy those desires through your higher self, your I am, with what you consider the little you have. Wow. With what you consider not much in 3D reality, right? That less than 1%. that account that's leaving and that little account that you have. All of that you're looking at, it's just 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. Even his disciples said, when Jesus mentioned this, the disciples said, well, why don't we just send them into town to get something to eat? 5,000 people, send them into town to get something to eat. And Jesus said, no, we're going to feed them. Wow! Hear this. Feed them. What was Jesus saying here? We're going to feed them. Instead of trying to send thousands of your thoughts away and resist them and run away from them, or run away from the 10,000 forms in 3D reality, feed that thought spiritual understanding. Feed that thought faith of your I am. Do you hear this, right? Initial supply currently manifested in 3D represents 5 loaves and 2 fish. Right? And even the disciples were doubting, how are we going to feed 5,000 with just that? Right? It represents your spiritual awareness that is always available. That's what that little supply represents. Remember, Jesus got it from a little boy offered it up. A little boy had 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. The compassion and the love of a little boy. That's why Jesus loved little children. The little boy had that, right? In initial supply, currently manifested 3D, represents your spiritual awareness that is always available. I am the door. It's always there, right? And then the disciple Philip doubted. That represents the power of the 5 senses, the 3D you, to command spiritual increase, or I am. So Philip doubted, but knew, but also at the same time knew that there's a power within those. Philip also represented the power of the 5 senses, the power of your conscious mind to command, right, to impress that greater subconscious. Wow. Right, there was power there. The power to that creative medium, that greater subconscious is your conscious mind. It's Philip. That's where the power is. And you doubt it sometimes, but it still represents the door. It still can't be ignored or run away from or rejected. Wow. Jesus said, and then as he got the bread and the fish from the little boy, he said, have the people sit down. In other words, have the people represent, remember, those thousands of thoughts, that everything that's going on, all that activity within your mind. And he says, have them sit down. In other words, settle down, right? Rest in fulfillment. Rest in the confident expectation of increasing that substance that you have. Right? Rest in the confident expectation. Sit down, rest on the grass, rest on that it's all going to manifest. You're going to multiply it. Wow, that's big. So, and this is when the disciples said, this just before that, I just made this point, when the disciples wanted to send them away to the village, 5,000 people, to get something. And Jesus says, they do not need to go away. You give them something to eat. That was the command. Feed that. Feed the I am consciousness, that greater spiritual understanding to rise in consciousness. Well, I got to chill just saying that, right? It's not about resisting or denying 3D conditions with your thoughts. Rather, it's about feeding them spiritual understanding. Very clear here in this one little story is everything about manifesting everything you could ever want. You get it? Money, fame, love, cars, houses, well-being, peace, it's all here. He took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, and looking upward to heaven, he blessed the food. In other words, he lifted it up in consciousness to that I amness, right? That what you look at as limited conditions of 3D, in those 5 loaves and those 2 fish, those 2 accounts, or whatever conditions you see in 3D reality, lift them up, bless them, gratitude, give praise for them, right within. That opens the door to divine supply. That's how you realize and affirm infinite supply, right? I am lifting what little you have up, increasing it through faith. That's your I am. You're lifting it up, the little you have. Your 5 senses, your conscious mind becomes a power or a door to all you want. Wow. That's why Philip represented the 5 senses of the conscious mind, is because he represents power. It's power to command that I am, to command to command that those loaves and that those fish to multiply. Wow, 3D conditions are divine ideas when recognized and realized and lifted up. Do you get it? Those conditions all around you are divine ideas when recognized, when lifted up to the light of God, to the light of that I am awareness. They increase and multiplied through faith. That's how Jesus did it. So, what are the key points? Remember, the door, I am, to everything you desire is through your conscious awareness of the divine substance behind all forms. It's through that 3D mind, through that conscious mind, through those 5 senses, through those conditions you're looking at, everything you want is there. Bless and express gratitude for all 3D conditions. Raise them up. Move beyond thoughts of doubt and lack and appearances. Imagination and prayer, recognition of your I am, spiritual substance to multiply, creates out of that one substance, both seen and unseen, and with faith becomes your desired manifested reality. Hear this. Imagination and prayer, in other words, recognition of your I am, that spiritual substance to multiply, that creates out of that one substance, both the seen and unseen, right? Because that one substance that you're looking at, those conditions represent the both seen and unseen. That less than 1% represents all of infinity, right? All of God. And with faith, with your faith, as you lift it up, as you believe, becomes your desired manifested reality. Remember, getting, resisting separates you from your abundance. Giving and allowing unites you. Getting, wanting to get something, resisting something, separates you from your abundance. Giving and allowing unites you. Oh my God. You will never look at 3D conditions the same ever again. That was big. I am your host, Tom Karen, and this is the Be Something Wonderful studio of higher consciousness, where we help you level up and become the best version of yourself. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification button. Like and share our videos. That's how we get our message out. You can follow us on Facebook at Be Something Wonderful. We have a group called the Be Something Wonderful Ambassadors. It is banging. It is growing. This is where you can join, right? It's a private group, but you're welcome to join it. And so it's open to everyone, but within it, it's private. So you're not sharing your messages with the world. You're just sharing it with each other. And this is where you can give guidance and insight and ask for guidance and insight. Great group. Also follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Tom Karen. And don't forget, guys, there's another video coming out shortly on the membership channel. And if you want to join that, there's a link below, but there's more coming here as well. And guys, we're all creators for all the information. Just go to our website at tomkaren.com or besomethingwonderful.com. This is Tom with Be Something Wonderful Creators. Until next time, with great love, with great light and infinite gratitude, see you soon.